Attention duelists! My hair says, welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. So every 6 months, I get to set myself apart from the crowd once again in a very unique way. Because most of the time, in the aftermath of the release of the ban list, people are basically just bitching and moaning about it. Something didn't get hit enough, or my deck got hit too much, and now it's dead, and I can't use it, and anything can top, or there won't be anything that can top except 2 decks, so there won't be any skill in the game. I like how there's always that thing, like either when they don't limit enough, it's only a couple of decks can top, so there won't be any skill in the game, or any deck can top, so there won't be any skill in the game. So there apparently, no matter what Konami does, there won't be any skill in the game anyway, and people are like, you can't side anymore. Anyway, so my response to that is, so what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to quit the game? No, you're not. You are going to find a way to adapt, and that's what this video is about. Every 6 months, after every format, I make a video about what to do about the current format, and that is exactly what I'm doing today. Welcome to what to do about the September 2013 ban list. So basically what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to quickly run down the list, or as quickly as I can, and go through just what decks are going to do to adapt to these changes, and then at the end I'll see if I can wrap it up a little better. So first, the baby's getting banned. You're going to see Dragon Plant still being run. They don't have Super Rejuve or Card Destruction or Gold Sark really anymore. So they're going to have to rely on Sacred Sword of the 7 Stars. Dragon Ravine is going to be a much more common card now, and it can really set up those plays. Since the deck is really slow unless you can get dragons in the graveyard, which takes a while, Dragon Ravine can actually put 2 dragons in the graveyard right off the bat and get your plays going, which is very good for the deck. But you're definitely going to see a lot of that discard and draw power, Sacred Sword of the 7 Stars. Things like Dark World Dealings may show up a little bit more in those dragon decks, especially with the Dragon Plant, since you can put like Dandy in the graveyard and be able to use its effect to get those tokens and do some synchro shenanigans. That's pretty much how Dragon Rulers are going to respond to losing their babies. Elemental Hero Stratos being gone. I've actually been seeing a couple of people start to run hero decks that are still classic hero beat. They aren't giving up on heroes, but instead of using Stratos to add consistency, they're really like making use of their Gemini Sparks by adding in other Gemini monsters. Things like Crusader of Endymion and Evocator Chevalier, or however you're supposed to pronounce that French, screw French. And those make the Gemini Sparks always live. They're all monsters with very high attack points, so you can use that beatdown power. They're also relying a lot more on, what's that card? Hero Strike? The one with the Spark Man rising from the grave. Hero Blast, that one. To get Alias back to their hand once again to make those Gemini Sparks live and to get those pluses. So they can still produce advantage, it's just they're going to be significantly less consistent without Stratos, and you're just not going to see Bubble Beat because you can't get the, just recycle that Stratos over and over and over again, and you don't have quite as much power off of the Shining anymore, but you can still run Hero Beat. It is still a viable deck, so it isn't totally dead. You're going to see it on a casual level, but I think that Elemental Hero Stratos basically takes Alive Heroes or Bubble Beat out of the game. In terms of their limiting Shockmaster or banning it, I think that really that's the only thing that can do is be good for the game. Like, I don't see any decks that are totally reliant on Shockmaster. I'm a Thunder Family player. If any deck is reliant on Shockmaster, it's that deck. But in all reality, you don't need it because in Thunder Family, you have Vylon Prism, which can create other forms of lockdown with things like Stardust, Thought Ruler, and Crimson Blader. You don't really need that Shockmaster. In fact, Nats, I only made Shockmaster twice the entire day, and I still lost both of the games in which I used the Shockmaster. So it isn't that important to people, especially since a lot of the decks that can do those rank 4 plays also have 0 defense point monsters in their deck. And what that means is they can go for King of the Feral Imps and get Masked Chameleon from their deck, which can also go into those level 8 synchro plays. which means that they can get those Crimson Bladers and Thought Rulers for themselves. So if you really need that extra deck lockdown power, you can go for those level 8 synchro plays, but in all reality, the only thing that Shockmaster being banned can be is good for the game. Card destruction being gone, Dark Worlds have no place to complain. They lost basically all of the cards except for Abyss Dweller and Shadow Imprisoning Mirror that stopped them. So card destruction being gone and getting those cards limited is a little bit like if they banned Gateway and then gave Samurai 2 Shiens. Like, I don't know. So speaking of Samurai, they took away Gateway, which I personally, I would have limited United before I took away Gateway, because I just hate United. I think it's dumb, and I don't think it should be at 3, but Gateway's gone, so Samurai are actually going to have to play around consistent builds with a little bit more conserving resources instead of relying on that opening Gateway, which, yes, is like Ultimate Offering, which also got banned, that they don't have to rely on it, but in all reality, it's just a good thing that it's gone. It's one of those cards that I talk about that's just stupid, that allows you to use up your entire hand without any worries about consequences. Heavy Storm being gone, there are a couple ways that you can get around this. There's Malevolent Catastrophe, of course, which is good. Don't get me wrong, like, people aren't going to be afraid of Heavy Storm, so they're going to start setting more back row, which means that you can bait them into setting more back row and then attacking, and then you'll have that Malevolent Catastrophe for them. The thing that Malevolent Catastrophe doesn't do, that Heavy Storm does, is guarantee that you can get those plays in during your turn, because if you use Malevolent Catastrophe, your opponent can still set cards during their turn, but if you use Heavy Storm, of course, they can't set cards during your turn. So if you really needed Heavy Storm for that, you can also use Trap Stun this format. Trap Stun will be very effective for that. You can use Decree if you're really not into traps, but there are things you can do about Heavy Storm being gone. You'll just have to be careful about the format becoming heavy on back row. We're definitely going to see those MSTs coming back into the main deck, and definitely I think 3 Forbidden Lance may even become a staple lineup for a lot of decks. Monster Reborn being gone, I don't know, use Call of the Haunted. There's really no... if your deck absolutely needed Monster Reborn, similar to Pot of Avarice, you probably were not playing very well. And Pot of Avarice being gone, people are going to be complaining about it a lot because it, makes a lot of decks... Well, their excuse is that, oh no, now my deck doesn't have any late game plays, and I'm like, get over it. You can just, I don't know, play skillfully in the early game so you don't have to rely on using Pot of Avarice later. I always hated Pot of Avarice because it allows players to be dumb in the early game and still win. Like, the fact that Pot of Avarice is gone just makes bad players have to become good players in order to win games. So Pot of Avarice being gone, I have no sympathy for anybody who's complaining about it, especially since we're getting Pot of Duplicity, which is arguably better in some decks. Like Junk Doppel will be able to use Pot of Duplicity basically as much as they want. That new plant deck that's coming out that can use... what the hell is that? That can use Destiny Hero Plasma. Oh, it's a very large truck. That's what it is. Anyway, they can use Destiny Hero Plasma. Those will be able to use Pot of Duplicity. Spellbook of Judgment being gone. Spellbooks really can't complain, with most of the outs for them being gone, similar to Dark World. With Shockmaster, Eradicator, and Macro being out of the picture, basically, Spellbooks are still actually going to be a very good deck. They have a lot of consistency still. They still have that Secrets Masters Fate play that they can make. They still have a lot of advantage that they can gain through things like Spellbook of Power and through High Priestess and the Grand Spellbook Tower. I think that Spellbooks are actually going to be a very strong deck this format. In my opinion, the new meta is going to look like, or at least the top tier, it's going to be mainly 4-Axis Fire Fists, as my sister High. You're going to see Fire Kings, Evil Swarms, and Infernities. Those are going to be the things you see most, but you're also going to see, that's my mom, quite a bit of Spellbooks in the game, because they're just an extremely consistent deck. They're still very powerful, and they have a slower format with most of their outs gone. So I think that Spellbooks are going to see a significant increase in play. And of course I'm leaving things out, like in last video everybody's like, you forgot to mention Dragoonies, you forgot to mention Exectors. Yes, there are other good decks in the game. I'm just taking things that are relevant to what I'm talking about right now. Calm down. So Super Rejuvenation being gone, just like, stop making crazy dumb plays with discarding dragons. Stop playing Dragon Draws Exodia, whatever. Dragons aren't going to have that crazy end phase draw power, which I'm okay with. There's really nothing bad that comes out of Super Rejuvenation being banned. Spellbook or Solemn Judgment. This is one that I really want to talk about because Solemn Judgment actually serves a few purposes in a deck. And like I said in the last video, I think it's one of the most skillful cards in the game to use. But now we are going to have to admittedly be a little more thoughtful in how we put our decks together. If we can't just throw in a Solemn and be like, okay, there I have a negated play. If you'll have to actually think about what you're going to see in the meta, what decks you're going to be playing against, and what your needs for your deck are going to be. So if you have a deck that really has those issues with, extra deck monsters being some of those inherent summons that Solemn can negate, you can go with Black Horn of Heaven, which still has the same effect as Solemn Judgment with no price in that instance. If you really need to be able to ensure that your plays go through and stop trap cards, you can go with, what's it called? You know what I'm talking about. 7 Tools of the Bandit, that card. Which has, once again, a lower price, but you have to be better at planning what you're putting into your deck. And if you just really need that removal for any spell or trap card, of course, you can use Dark Bribe. I'm not a big fan, but, some people really like that card, and you can use it. Ultimate Offering, stop doing OTKs. Like, Madolches are still going to be very good. Gadgets are still going to be very good. Like, I can't think of very many decks that are going to be just absolutely sucktacular this format. So then we've got, on the limited list, Dragoons and Diva. Mermails still have Abyssphere, which is nice. And once again, just like Dark Worlds, most of their outs have been limited or banned. I guess they've really just been limited. I suppose Shockmaster is a pretty good out to Mermails. But really the only thing they have to worry about now is Abyss Dweller. So while they have lost a degree of consistency, Mermails will still be able to play, and they don't have quite as much OTK power. I've actually seen quite a few people replacing their Dragoons and their Divas with Sacred Sword of the Seven Stars. It makes a lot of sense. They run a lot of level 7 monsters, and they run that Tempest, which means you can still possibly get the plus off of that card, and it is a very consistent draw power for that deck, particularly with the vast array of level 7 monsters you're going to be using. So I think Mermails are still very runnable. Once again, I don't think there are very many sucktacular decks in this format. Except possibly 3 Axis, which I'm about to get to, because Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Spirit is gone. They could deal with Rooster being at 1, because you could just use Hawk or Leopard or something like that instead of Rooster. 3 Axis was still very good with that. Spirit being limited, that's kind of the entire point of 3 Axis, is Spirit. With Spirit at 1, like, your only hope at using 3 Axis is like going Spirit into Lion Emperor to get Spirit, use Spirit to go into another Lion Emperor, etc., which still is very good, but it actually requires you to get that Spirit in your hand and keep it available to you. You can't get removed, or else you're screwed. It can't get sent back to your deck, or else you have to search it out again. So I don't see 3 Axis being very good. 4 Axis, like I said before, is going to be extremely good. Oh yeah, Boojins. Forgot about Boojins. That's one of the things in the top tier that's going to be pretty crazy. Anyway, moving on and I'm going to stop having ADD. Birdman to 1. Stop running Gen X Valley. If you really have to run Gen X Valley, I suppose you can get pretty much the same effect out of Winged Rhinos. Just probably not on your turn or anything like that. But you're just going to have to stop doing those loops, and people are really wanting to interrupt this video today. But I will continue. Rescue Rabbit going to 1. Like, I think that we're going to see less of that whole 3 vanilla rabbit thing. Alright, sorry about that weird break that just happened there. I had to sign for a certified in the mail. So, yeah, Thunder King Ryo to 1, Rescue Rabbit to 1. I don't think that we are going to see that rabbit at all anymore. I'm kind of sorry to see Rabbit go, because it added an interesting aspect to a lot of decks, and it's kind of like the Elemental Dragons in that it gave boosts to a lot of decks that really needed it. But now that it's gone, like, I suppose it makes sense. The decks that it really hurts are, I suppose, like Gem Knights. If you're really set on Gem Knights, they're hurt by Rescue Rabbit going to 1. Evil Swarms a little bit, although Evil Swarms have gotten the go-ahead for a great format for them. They're going to be very good this format. I think they might even hit the tier 1. Thunder King Ryota 1. Once again, if you need that inherent special summon stopping, you definitely have Black Horn of Heaven. If you need that lockdown power, though, we are going to be getting Mistake in the TCG, hopefully very soon. And Mistake has an even better effect than Thunder King Ryo for stopping people from adding stuff to their hands. So Thunder King Ryo isn't a huge loss for the game, especially once Shadow Specters comes out, which I think is when we're going to be getting Mistake. But all in all, I mean, it sucks for stun decks. If you really need that monster power with the Beater that also has the special effect, you can use Doom Caliber Knight, which in a slower format is going to be actually probably more effective for the game than it was before. So if you're really going for that monster stun power, Doom Caliber Knight is the way to go. Have a Gishki Mind August. Just Gishkis keep getting loops and they keep getting killed. Dulor needs to make up its mind whether it's going to be limited, semi-limited, or unlimited. Ptolemy M7. Constellars are still going to be very good. Having the one M7 hurts a little bit, but it's still very powerful, and it still has those Pleiades plays. You're just going to have to deal with not having that follow-up to work with in the form of M7. You can, if you're using Pleiades, use Gaia Knight Force of Earth instead once you run out of, or not Gaia Knight Force, Gaia Dragon the whatever, that exceeds thingy. To have a similar effect, but it won't have that adding power that Constellar Ptolemy M7 has. D-Fissure to 1, Macro to 1, and Soul Drain to 1. If you're fighting against decks like Mermails, you're really going to have to rely on Abyss Dweller now, but you can do the 1-1-1 thing where you do 1 D-Fissure, 1 Macro, 1 Soul Drain, which is actually something we used to do in Yu-Gi-Oh! All the time. We had many, many limited cards, and you just used, one of each of them. Because that way, the game had more variety to it. It took a little more skill. You couldn't always rely on having those, but you could still get those things off. So if you really need that macro D-Fissure kind of power, you can do the 1-1-1 with macro D-Fissure Soul Drain. If you really need the consistent banishing power, you can use Banisher of the Radiance. Which will be still very powerful, especially now that you can do some damage step tricks with Dress and Lance with it. Gold Sarcophagus to 1, I don't know. Dragon decks are going to be using more Sacred Sword of the 7 stars now. I don't know. Royal Tribute to 1 kind of sucks for Gravekeepers, but not as much as the rest of this limited list, with Bottomless, Compulsory Eradicator at Macro, Solemn Warning, and not Solemn Warning, Soul Drain, and Torrential Tribute to 1. That heavy back row really hurts Gravekeepers even more, and it hurts a lot of decks too. Evil Swarms are going to lose a bit of power with the loss of Bottomless and Torrential, and of course Compulsory and really Eradicator Epidemic Virus. But they still do have quite a bit of stun power. They can definitely rely on those alternate trap cards like Vanity's Emptiness and Fiendish Chain, and yes, there are people unpacking in the background making quite a bit of noise. Anyway, I had a train of thought and I totally lost it. Oh yeah, Infernities. Infernities rely on a lot of heavy back row, but once again, they do still have 3 barrier. You can still use Fiendish Chain. You can still, if you really want to, use Vanity's Emptiness, especially if you're doing that D-Fissure thing with the Xyz Infernities. Then you can basically use all your monsters to your heart's content without having to worry about using or losing, I suppose, Vanity's Emptiness. Moving on, the semi-limits, a lot of them are actually better for decks. Like I said, there aren't really any decks this format that are going to be totally sucktacular. I think that a lot of decks are going to be very powerful. And TG Striker coming back to 2 may see the rise of TG Stun again. We may also see TG Agents coming back. Agents are a really popular choice on Facebook right now and the Dueling Network forums. Mizuki and Plague Spreader 2 will increase the playability of those vampire cards, especially with Mizuki to 2. You can also use that Go-Go-Go deck a lot more powerfully with 2 Mizuki in the game because it adds on that ability to just special summon the Go-Go-Go Ghost into Go-Go-Go Golem from the graveyard using Mizuki. More often now. Tenki to 2, suck it up, Fire Fist players. You didn't really need it at 3. And you'll still be, 4-axis will still be pretty crazy amazing with Tenki at 2. D Prison to 2, I mean, nobody was running it at 3 If you really need more, just run like Mirror Force. Or if you've already maxed out on Mirror Forces and D Prisons, I suppose you can run Sakuretsu Armor, but you shouldn't need to get that far. And all the things unlimited. You guys know what I thought about that. Scapegoat is actually going to produce some very interesting plays, especially with those plant combos coming out. With Malicious at 3, we may see some interesting Plasma and Malicious builds, with D-Draw and Scapegoat being able to summon that Plasma. Just a lot of cool things are coming out of this format. So in conclusion, I really don't see how people think this format is going to be that bad. Yes, Infernities, Dark Worlds, and Evil Swarms are going to be scary decks, but you know what? That's what Shadow Imprisoning Mirror is for. 4-Axis Fire Fist, once again, very good, but that's actually a pretty skillful deck if you play it correctly. So I don't think that people should be complaining nearly as much as they are, if they complain at all. So that's my take on what to do about the September 2013 ban list. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why. And then subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos. Thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.